Jane Roxana here, and my fourth show from my beginning series, and this is talking about day 2, and we're going through Genesis 1:6 through 8, and it reads, "And God said, Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day." Now, the English word firmament in the Bible is a translation of the Hebrew word rakia, meaning expanse or stretched out thinness, or simply space. Now, this is a time the atmosphere was created, for God is preparing the earth for life. Now, what does it mean dividing the waters under the firmament from the waters above the firmament? Well, I'm going to go through that and see. Now, remember, the earth is pretty much a great giant mass of matter and water. All right? Now, don't think of this as the size of the earth is today. This contained all the mass in the water for the creation of the rest of the universe, okay? So when God divided the waters from the waters, let's just do a little point arrows of division here. So let's divide some waters. There we go. All right. Now, remember, it says stretched out thinness. Now, let's think of our atmosphere. It is 5 layers in our atmosphere: the troposphere, the stratosphere, mesosphere, thermosphere, and exosphere. And it gets thinner as it goes up. So let's put that in here. All right, so I'm going to label these things here. So this will be Earth, atmosphere. Now, what makes you think the atmosphere is here? It says, "And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament." So the firmament is the expanse between the waters. All right, so where does this firmament start, though? Now, I'm going to read Genesis 1:20. It says, in the second part of it, "And fowl let fly on the earth on the face of the expanse of the heavens." So the face of the expanse would be like the front of the expanse. So I'm going to put some birds in here. This is where the birds are flying. Put the beautiful M birds. There we go. So the birds fly on the face of the expanse, and that's where our atmosphere, thinnest layers out, and he separated the waters. All right, and then in Genesis 1:14 it says, "And God said, Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven." So he's talking about all the stars and galaxies and stuff in there. Okay? And we're going to be getting to the birds and all this later on. But I want to show what this kind of proves here. All right, and then in Psalms 148:4 it says, "Praise ye him, heavens of heavens, and ye waters that are above the heavens." Waters above the heavens. All right. So I'm going to read Genesis 1:7 again. "And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so." All right. Now I'm going to talk about heavens of heavens, or the third heavens that they're talking about. There's a few verses I want to go through. All right. Isaiah 66:1 said, "Thus saith the Lord, the heaven is my throne, and the earth is my footstool." So let's just say, for example, that our atmosphere would be considered maybe the first heaven, the expanse, the second, and maybe heaven, God's throne, is the third heaven. 1 Kings 8:27 says, "But will God indeed dwell on the earth? Behold, the heaven and heaven of heavens cannot contain thee." 2 Corinthians 12:2 says, "I knew a man in Christ above 14 years, Whether in the body I cannot tell, or whether out of the body I cannot tell, God knows. Such an one caught up to the third heaven. Nehemiah 9:6 says, Thou, even thou, art Lord alone. Thou hast made heaven, the heaven of heavens, with all their hosts. Now I found a couple verses also that deals with the Lord upon the waters. Psalms 29:3 says, The voice of the Lord is upon many waters. The God of glory thundereth. The Lord is upon many waters. So perhaps his throne in heaven is upon many waters. Psalms 29:10. The Lord sitteth upon the flood. Yea, the Lord sitteth king forever. And I wanted to throw all that in there. So whether we're ever going to find out if the universe is surrounded by a whole bunch of water, we'll probably never know unless we find the end of the universe. Also, it's possible as he stretched it out thinness, the water was displaced throughout the universe also. And now I'm going to read a couple articles dealing with that point. So water was plentiful in the early universe. This is an article at phys.org. And the first part of it says, astronomers have long held that water, H2O, was a relative latecomer to the universe. So at first they thought water didn't exist for later. But new research poised for publication in Astrophysical Journal Letters reveals that the universe's first reservoirs of water may have been formed much earlier than previous thought, less than 1 billion years after the Big Bang, when the universe was only 5% of its current age. Well, if they were interested at all in what the Bible says, the water was created on the first day. Another article titled, Astronomers Find Largest, Most Distant Reservoir of Water. Now this is one reason why they put water being earlier in their evolutionary model. And this is put out by nasa.gov. 2 teams of astronomers have discovered the largest and farthest reservoir of water ever detected in the universe. The water, equivalent to 140 trillion times all the water in the world's ocean, surrounds a huge feeding black hole called a quasar, more than 12 billion light years away. That is a whole lot of water. Now, Nicholas Cowan, an astronomer and astrobiologist at the University of Washington in Seattle, states, the fact that water is so abundant should not be such a surprise. Water is ridiculously common, one of the most common molecules in the universe. Well, for biblical creation scientists, it was not a surprise at all. Now remember, God's ways are not our ways. Isaiah 55:8 says, For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. So remember, when we're discussing the universe and the creation of it, we have to remember not to put God in a human box. All right, and project our humanity onto him, which is easy for us to do. Now let's talk about the oxygen in the atmosphere. How do cosmic evolutionists believe that the atmosphere got into how oxygen got into our atmosphere? All right, this is an article titled, The Origin of Oxygen in Earth's Atmosphere by David Biello in scientificamerica.com. The breathable air we enjoy today originated from tiny organisms, although the details remain lost in geologic time. All right, so this is a guess. It's hard to keep oxygen molecules around, despite the fact that it's the 3rd most abundant element in the universe. Forged in the super hot, super dense core of stars, That's because oxygen wants to react. It can form compounds with nearly every other element on the periodic table. So how did Earth end up with an atmosphere made up of roughly 21% of the stuff? The answer is tiny organisms known as cyanobacteria, or blue-green algae. These microbes conduct photosynthesis using sunshine, water, and carbon dioxide to produce carbohydrates and, yes, oxygen. In fact, all the plants on Earth incorporate symbiotic cyanobacteria, known as chloroplast, to do their photosynthesis for them down to this day. All right. Now, do they have any proof of the cyanobacteria? Well, let's find out. There's a discovery called the Apex Chert Formation in Australia, and is considered where the earliest life forms on Earth were found, because it's considered the oldest rock formation on the Earth, going back to the first rock formations. So let's find out what they found. Now remember this date, 2002. Okay, this article was put out by Science Daily by the University of California, Los Angeles. And its title is UCLA Scientist Colleagues Substantiate Biological Origins of Earliest Fossils. UCLA paleobiologist J. William Schaff and his colleagues have substantiated the biological origin of the earliest known cellular fossils, which are 3.5 billion years old. The research is published in the March 7th issue of the journal Nature. Schaff and his team of scientists at the University of Alabama, Birmingham, have devised a new technique using a unique laser Raman imaging system that enables them to look inside of rocks and determine what they are made of, providing a molecular map. The article Schaff states, "There is no question at all that we have substantiated the biological origins of the oldest fossils now known." He continues, "We have established that the ancient specimens are made of organic matter just like living microbes, and no non-biological organic matter is known from the geological record. In science, facts always prevail, and the facts are quite clear here." Then it goes on giving his credentials. In addition to being a paleobiologist, Schaff is also a geologist, a microbiologist, and organic geochemist. Director of UCLA Center for the Study of Evolution and the Origin of Life, Schaff was awarded the 2000 Psi Beta Kappa Award in Science for his book, you might have heard of it, Cradle of Life, The Discovery of Earth's Earliest Fossils. The annual award is presented for outstanding contributions to the literature of science. Perhaps it should be to the literature of evolution. We shall find out. Now, from the very beginning, this discovery was very controversial within the scientific community. Let's keep reading. An article by Charles Q. Choi, this is 2011, the article titled, "New Study Finds Apex Fossils Aren't Life." And it was found at astrobio.net. Structures thought of as the oldest known fossils of microbes might actually be microscopic mineral formations not associated with life, suggesting that astrobiologists have to be careful calling alien objects life when scientists have trouble telling what is or was alive on Earth. The reason he's talking about astrobiologists is because the Mars mission looking for life on Mars is using the Schaff's laser Raman imaging system to look for life. Well, that imaging system thought that the oldest fossils were the microbes cyanobacteria that were the first microbes on Earth. See, these microbes are needed to produce the oxygen on the Earth. So they wanted proof of this. And Schaff is an evolutionist first before he's a scientist. And you can find out because even at the very beginning, it was controversial. But he saw an opportunity to prove evolution, and he ran with it. So much so, he wrote an award-winning book and was awarded a Psi Beta Kappa Award in Science for that book. You keep reading the second article here by Choi. More than 20 years ago, microscopic structures uncovered in the roughly 3.5 billion-year-old Apex Chert Formation in Western Australia were described as the oldest microbial fossils. These structures were interpreted as cyanobacteria, once known as blue-green algae, embedded in a silica-loaded rock formed in a shallow marine setting. However, the interpretation of the structures has always been controversial, and it is still hotly debated among scientists searching for Earth's earliest evidence for life. Specimens from the site apparently displayed branching structures that some researchers said were inconsistent with life, while others dismissed such branching as artifacts from photo software, which was probably Schaff. Analysis of the structures themselves suggested they were carbon-based and therefore associated with the organic chemistry of life, but some contended they were a type of carbon known as graphite, while others said they were a kerogen, a mixture of organic compounds. Now, University of Kansas geospectrometrist Craig Marshall and his colleagues have taken another look at the Apex Chert structures and determined they might not be carbon-based after all. Instead, they seem to just be a series of fractures filled with crystals. It's one of those funny moments in science when you go out to do one thing and it completely flips 180 on you, Marshall said. Now, another article dealing with the same matter goes back and points out two other problems with these cyanobacteria as being the first life forms on Earth. This article is called Oldest Fossils Are Just Naturally Occurring Minerals, written by Brian Thomas, MS. You can find this at icr.org. Scientists have been going back and forth over whether certain microscopic features in very old rocks were caused by lifeless minerals or living bacteria. Because of where these rocks are situated in the rock record, the answer to this question is important for both the creation and evolution models. And new research appears to have refuted the generally held notion that these features are fossils, finding them instead to be just minerals. Australia's Apex Chert Formation is comprised of very hard quartz rock. Over 20 years ago, researchers suspected that tiny shapes within the rocks were fossils of oxygen-producing bacteria. But this interpretation did not fit the standard evolutionary history because, here's the things I want to talk about, the age assigned for this formation is 3.45 billion years, a mere 1 billion years after the supposed formation of Earth itself. In the new scenario based on these fossils, lifeless chemicals spontaneously formed into cyanobacteria, which were assumed to be the first living cells to have evolved since the Apex Chert Formation is located in one of Earth's earliest rock layers. One problem is that cyanobacteria are known to have more specified biochemical machinery than simpler bacteria, enabling them to perform photosynthesis. Why would the most complicated versions of bacteria have emerged before the simpler versions? Another problem is the timing. Why would cyanobacteria evolve first and then fail to evolve any further until all other phyla suddenly emerged during the Cambrian explosion of life 3 billion years later? These seeming incongruities must have been partly to blame for the fact that these purported 3,465 million year old microfossils from Australia have been the subject of considerable debate. Now, Alison Alcott Marshall, she helped co-author with Craig Marshall the interpretation of the microbes that they found in the chert formation. Okay, she says, we found no sign of any microfossil. She explained, one reason why these microscopic features seem to have been misidentified as fossils, they're just circles and rods. There are a lot of things in nature that make circles and rods. Brian Thomas continues in his article. How many other rock-bound features have been similarly misidentified in various contexts? It is a great help that one need not rely only on the rock evidence to obtain sure knowledge of the distant past. Instead, this information was written down as the words of Genesis by those who were there in the beginning, offering a solid foundation for those seeking to understand the history of the earth and its inhabitants. Dr. Larry Vardaman, PhD, states, if the earth is billions of years old, the radioactive production of helium in the earth's crust should have added a large quantity of helium to its atmosphere. Current diffusion models all indicate that helium escaped to space from the atmosphere at a rate much less than its production rate. The low concentration of helium actually measured would suggest that the Earth's atmosphere must be quite young. David F. Kopage, in his article Atmospheres, a Narrow Zone for Life, states, atmospheres are being found to be too dynamic to endure for billions of years. In addition, the balance of conditions necessary for life seems more delicate with each new discovery. Comparative planetology shows that the factors governing atmospheres can vary widely. The evidence points to a young solar system with one planet situated in a narrow habitable zone with the right geology and atmosphere for life. If the planet is young, life could not have evolved. Design remains, therefore, the simplest and most elegant explanation. All right. I haven't done any Americanism yet, so I think I will do a little today. And this is a speech that was written 220 years ago in 1797 by Thomas Paine. Now, Thomas Paine was one of the least religious people of the founders. And this was titled, The Study of God. All right, he states, it has been the error of the schools to teach astronomy and all the other sciences as subjects of natural philosophy as accomplishments only, whereas they should be taught theologically, or with reference to the being who is the author of them, for all the principles of science of our divine origin. Man cannot make or invent or contrive principles. He can only discover them, and he ought to look through the discovery to the author. When we examine an extraordinary piece of machinery, an astonishing pile of architecture, a well-executed statue, or a highly finished painting where life and action are imitated, and habit only prevents our mistaking a surface of light and shade for cubical solidity. Our ideas are naturally led to think of the extensive genius and talents of the artist. When we study the elements of geometry, we think of Euclid. When we speak of gravitation, we think of Newton. How then is it that when we study the works of God in the creation, we stop short and do not think of God? Is it from the error of the schools in having taught those subjects as accomplishments only, and thereby separated the study of them from the being who is the author of them? The evil that has resulted from the error of the schools in teaching natural philosophy as an accomplishment only has been that of generating in the pupils a species of atheism. Instead of looking through the works of the creation to the Creator himself, they stop short and employ the knowledge they acquire to create doubts of his existence. They labor with studied ingenuity to ascribe everything they behold to innate properties of matter and jump all over the rest by saying that matter is eternal. All right, end with that. Thank you for watching, and my next show 5 will be on day 3.